Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me, see me. If you're here, leave a comment so I know you're here. Hello, Happy New Year to everybody. I'm showing my face here for the first time in this year. So, Happy New Year. And if you're listening to me for the first time, I'll obviously introduce myself. I'll tell you what I do, what's my approach. But I thought I'll do this kind of live every week because I felt like I want to have more detailed discussions of the topics that come up and mostly that I hear that I talk about on Instagram. And I feel like all of these discussions need a lot more nuance. So I hope we can talk about different things here. So I'll wait for some time for people to join in if anyone's joining in. For those who are watching it later, hi to you too. If you are watching it later, you can always come back the next week. I'm planning to do this every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Hopefully, I stick to it and we can chat uh, at another time too. Lucy and Mutton's Dog Behavior and Nutrition is here. Hi, Surabhi. How are you? Happy New Year. I don't know. I don't feel like saying Happy New Year anymore. But still, I hope we all have a decent year. I hope. There is already a question here. I'll take it up. But I want to introduce myself. I want to talk about what I do and what I want to do during these lives when you bring up questions. How can we have a conversation about this while you are live on chat? Maybe at some point, uh, you know, I would like to have people come over and share their questions to have a conversation. It's very weird talking to a camera and nobody on the other end. So, yeah, let's see where this goes. Okay, so for those of you who will be watching this for the first time or who are listening to me for the first time, I'm Saujanya Vijanagar. I am a BARC certified canine behavior consultant, which means that I work with dog parents to navigate difficult situations with their dogs. Often people come and say their dogs are having XYZ behavior, or there are certain situations that they're not able to understand with their dogs. And that's where I come in. But my approach is a little different from what we would have seen with dog behavior professionals in the industry. Um, I work with the biosocial psycho approach, which means that we see behaviors being affected by various factors like biological factors, psychological factors, and social factors. So we have to really figure what is going on with your dog before we are able to address their behaviors. That's one part of the approach. The other approach that I keep talking about, and I am a huge advocate of it, is gentle parenting. Uh, I have obviously looked up, about gentle parenting in the human parenting world for the children, and I kind of try and extrapolate it to dogs, and lots of it is still valid. So that's what I do. Apart from that, I also love reading research papers and like researching about various topics which is relevant to dog behavior, dog parenting, dog caregiving, all of that. So you will probably hear me talk about some papers here. If you're interested in, like, if you want to discuss research papers, you can let me know. We can come in and have a chat about research papers too. So that's also possible. And uh, as part of our diploma with barks, and just by virtue of the fact that I live in India, we have an opportunity to look at street dogs or free roaming dogs, and that helps in terms of understanding what's the natural behavior of dogs when left to themselves, when they have the opportunity to navigate difficult situations, when they have agency and freedom, and what does that translate for dogs and their behavior. So we'll probably talk about all of these things and more through the lives. So that's what my intention is, to really advocate for the various different approaches to behavior, to talk about gentle parenting, to talk about our street dogs, to talk about research papers, all of this. So coming to questions, so I have mentioned that you can come here, talk to me, ask me questions that you might have. Since my approach is the bio socio psycho approach, it is important to understand that I may not be able to give you a full fledged answer, but I want to also not leave you with nothing. Maybe some direction that you can investigate into before you have to seek out any help, professional help. So I think that's where I want to have our conversations around the questions. I hope that helps. If you're here, do leave a hi, and let me know where you're joining me from. And if you have any questions, if you want to share something, if you have a topic that you want to talk about, uh, yeah, open for all of that. In the meantime, there was a comment that was left on the live before I even started the call. So started the video. So let me just take that up, and we'll see how we can approach that. The question says, let me see if I can bring it up. Yeah. My dog tries to bite any moving object, dust cloth while dusting, furniture, or us while shifting. What could be the reason? Great question. Now, moving objects can, like, I think a lot of our dogs are movement sensitive. So I have three street dogs who keep now coming in and out, and you'll be hearing a lot about them. I'm not tired talking about them, and I hope you won't be tired listening about them. um, for sake of simplicity, I'll also name them. One is Laddu, one is Lady, and the third one is Bala. uh, it's very interesting that Laddu is absolutely unbothered by movement, uh, but Lady is very sensitive to furniture movement. Like, if there was a day when my husband and I wanted to work out and we wanted to just move a few things around so that we have space, she got very flustered by movement of the furniture, and she ran away from the house. And there's Bala, who is even more sensitive to movement. And I think the way I'd like to look at this is to consider the fact that our dogs can be movement sensitive. That means that anything moving around them can catch them off guard. They can feel a little vulnerable, they can feel a little threatened in the situation. So it is quite possible that there is a fear of movement or sensitivity to movement. I don't even want to kind of label these things as a certain kind of reaction. They might just be movement sensitive. So I would probably reassure the dog quite a bit when they are feeling a little worried about movement. Furniture can be a huge block of things moving around, right? So I think that might be a little stressful for dogs. So it is a good idea to reassure them. With my dogs and with the street dogs who keep coming over, I always tell them it's okay. Not planning to hurt you, or we take it a little slow, not try to do it, on their face, or try to take them to a different room, while we are doing these kind of changes in arrangements and stuff like that. So that's with furniture and shifting things around. With dust cloth and all of that, also I myself am quite sensitive to the dust cloth sound, so that can come across from sound sensitivity too. But sometimes I've seen that my younger dog Zoe was very, very fearful of mops, cleaning mops. Um, I don't know, because it's not happened in my presence. I'm not very sure if she was hit at some point by a mop uh, when I was not around. Um, but yeah, I think that could also create a fear, right? Where they may feel intimidated by the object and feel like they might get hurt, or someone is trying to intimidate them, trying to hit them. So that fear can definitely creep up. So reassurance works there as well. But The other thing you might want to investigate, and this is something that you might need a professional intervention for, is pain, musculoskeletal pain. So I think it might be worth uh, considering all these factors. Just sensitivity of movement is quite, we have seen it in a lot of dogs. Fear of movement can be there, intimidation, or maybe some past traumatic incident where they have had someone hit them, could bring up these reactions, and of course pain. So I would probably look at these reasons, and I would keep reassuring my dogs when I need to do this. Interestingly, so when my house help would clean the rooms, I would probably take my dog to another room so that this she's not around and not get afraid of what's going on. So it's a good idea to take your dog away from where all of this is happening, and constantly reassure them, and uh, be there for them and connect with them. And I think that should help if there's no underlying pain. uh, if there's pain, then I would obviously investigate and see what kind of interventions, medical or alternate interventions that you might need, or any environmental changes. I think that's how I would probably approach the situation if it was with a client that I was dealing with. I hope that answers the question in some way. What do you guys think? I mean, if you have any follow up questions to whatever I said. Mary is here. Hi, Mary. Happy New Year. And Varun is here too. Happy New Year. So, as I wait for any more comments, any more questions that might come up, there were a couple of things that came up on my last few posts that I've shared on Instagram. So, I thought maybe I'll bring that up. We can discuss that. So, one of them was a post. I hope you guys are able to hear me, right? So if there's any technical issues, if you're not able to hear me, if something happens, do let me know so that I'm not rambling to myself. But yeah, so one of the posts was where I spoke about how I believe our dogs are the authority in their lives. They are the experts, and we humans, their caregivers, can take a step back and see if we can just be their facilitators, be their safe spaces. Um, and of course, there was a concern on this post where someone said that I don't think this is a fair thing to do. If especially in places like urban settings where it's an apartment kind of a place, then I wouldn't leave my dog, let my dog be the authority and behave in whatever manner. What do you think? I mean, if you're here, if you're listening in, what do you think about this? The fact that allowing our dogs to be the experts of their lives and take the um, advice, become the facilitator in that relationship instead of the expert. Um, what do you think about this? Do you think it's a fair thing? Do you think there's it can lead to unsafe behaviors? Let's, if you're here, let's have a discussion on that. I want to hear your thoughts about it, and of course I'll share mine as well. That's what we are here for. So yeah, if you have any comments, thank you, Mary, for letting me know. I'm glad you're here and listening in. I'm glad all of you are here. Okay, as I wait for you to like share your thoughts, if you have any, I'll share what my thoughts were, right? uh, I understand the concern, and I'll come to it in a minute, like why that concern exists. But I feel like we have to start letting our dogs be the experts of their life. I think, and I'll give you an example of what I meant. Of course, with this is exactly why I'm trying to do these long lives, because I want to be able to have these conversations in a more nuanced manner instead of leaving like a 90-second video. Um, So when I say our dogs are the authority and our dogs are the expert, uh, I mean that they know their surroundings, they know their body, they know their body, like what is the body looking for, what are the triggers, how are they feeling, how would they want to react in a certain situation, whether they're able to cope or not able to cope. They also try to communicate to the those around them how they're feeling. uh, but when we enter that relationship as a figure of authority, we seem to feel like we know what our dogs need, we know how our dogs need to respond, we know what behaviors our dogs should and shouldn't exhibit, and we know what's good and bad for our dogs. It's almost as if we know everything and our dogs need to be taught how to be a dog. I think Sindur tells this very well, that dogs already know how to be dogs. We don't know how to be dogs. So I think I'm of course paraphrasing Sindhu here. These are not her exact words, but I think that is so critical. And I had a couple of examples for this, right? So uh, for Zoe, we have moved into a fully dog-led feeding routine, right? So what I mean by fully dog-led feeding routine is when she feels hungry, she lets us know that she wants food. Of course, if she's gone too long without asking for food, which is very unusual for her, then we try and then figure, is she just like sleeping off? Is she like stressed out for some reason? Is she hungry? Should we offer it to her and then see if she'd like to have something? So we do kind of take charge when we feel like she's unwell or something, and she's trying to communicate that by not asking for food. But more or less, she asks for food at a particular time, and we offer it to her in what quantity she needs and what variety she needs. I mean, I keep telling it to Surbi, she's here, that I really wish I had a dog who would reject certain foods and accept and ask for certain foods, because Zoe is someone who asks for, she's okay with whatever food is being given to her. So, in a hypothetical situation, if she was picky about what she's eating, I would have been very happy, like listening in and getting curious about what she likes, what she doesn't like as well. So when we moved to dog led feeding routine, Zoe told us when her body needs food. Zoe told us when she's still hungry, even after being fed, which meant that the food that we gave was not satiating enough. It didn't fill her up. Uh, if she's asking for food, she also was communicating if she was overly hungry. It was also a communication of her mental state to us. So it was not just about diet and food, but also of what she's going through. Is she getting into this emotional eating space? So I think when I started hearing her out, because I come from a space of she knows her body, she knows what she's doing. I don't need to teach her things. When I come from that space, I think I realized that we can get more curious about what's happening. But let's say I came into that relationship as an expert. I assume that we are going to be saying, I know my dog needs to eat, and my dog needs to eat at this hour, and I know my dog needs to eat this much quantity, and my dog needs to eat this. Now, when I assume that I know everything about my dog, uh, then I'm going to get my dog to do what I want her to do, because I know it. I'm the expert. Uh, and that leads to not even listening to what our dogs have to say in that situation. Why is my dog refusing food? Right? So I think that's one example of listening to our dogs and hearing out the fact that they know about themselves a lot better than we might be aware of what their needs are and what they're trying to communicate to us. That's one example. Another example is, let's say, a social interaction. Now, Zoe is quite communicative of her social interactions. She gets into a social situation and she knows whether she wants to have an interaction, what kind of an interaction she wants to have, whether she wants to walk out of it, and she has clear preferences as well. She likes dogs who don't pay too much attention to her and are not too hyper towards her. So if I was the expert, then I'd probably enter the situation telling her whom she should meet, how she should meet, what behavior she should display when she's meeting a particular individual, how long she needs to meet this individual, and all of that, right? Versus if I believe Zoe knows what she's doing and what she's getting into, and all I'm doing in that situation is tuning into what her communication and facilitating what she needs and what she wants. uh, that's a whole different way of addressing a situation when we let ourselves know that our dogs know what they want. Mary has a comment: we must permit our dogs to communicate with us. If we don't do that, if we don't, that can lead to unsafe behavior. We need to listen to them and act. Absolutely. So now I'll come to why I feel like that the person who had concern with this kind of thought process had the concern, because to be honest, it's a very valid concern. That, what if our dogs engage in unsafe behaviors? When you say, if you let your dogs be the authority, they could engage in unsafe behaviors. First and foremost, I invite you to think about one thing, which is, why is it assumed that if we let our dogs be dogs, all they're going to do is engage in unsafe behaviors? Do you have any things to add to this? So I think that's one. I don't know why the assumption is automatically that our dogs will engage in unsafe behaviors. Second, and I think this is where the concern stems from, and that is the fact that most of our dogs in urban environments, with a kind of hyperfixation on their behaviors, are dysregulated, which means that they are not very tuned into their body, they're not very tuned into their surroundings, and not able to communicate with those around them, with the humans. The humans are not tuned in either. Like how Mary said, we need to listen to them. When none of us are tuned in and all of us are dysregulated and all of us are uh, quite disassociated with what's happening, that breeds the ground for unsafe behaviors. So I understand why the worry, for the fact that, if we let our dogs be the authority, they're just going to run wild. uh, but it comes from the fact that we are not providing the right kind of life for our dogs, not allowing them to indulge in natural behaviors for them, provide, the right kind of uh, functional movement, right kind of sniffing and enriching activities, right kind of connection, right kind of rest. I think so much they are deprived of so much in their life that they are not tuned in anymore to their body. And the less they're tuned into their body, the less they're likely to communicate and know what their body wants. So I think that is the gap that we'd like to fill. It's not that we shouldn't be giving our dogs the authority. It's not that we shouldn't be allowing our dogs to be the experts. It's the fact that we are not giving them the right kind of environment and right kind of space, safe spaces to engage in this, in smaller ways, right? Like, I think we can start small by allowing agency and authority in where they sleep. We can start as small as that. Where is my dog sleeping? Do we have multiple choices of different surfaces, different heights? uh, I mean, with 4 dogs at home right now and one more, Sammy, who used to be there, they all have such varied preferences of sleep spaces. Zoe always needs to be next to some human, if at all that's possible. If that's not possible, she'll be on my bed with that very nice soft blanket next to her, or she'll need to sleep on a pillow. She has very specific preferences. Um, Laddu will sleep, anywhere. Um, and Lady has preferences for spots that are at a height. She would initially sleep on the shoe rack that was outside our house, on the cushion on that, and now she sleeps on our couch. And Bala sleeps on the terrace. He doesn't sleep around any of us, because I think he feels a little um, scared around Laddu, maybe. And so he wants to just be left by himself, not wanting to be around. So it's very interesting that they all have very different preferences. So why not cater to the different choices that we can offer to our dogs and start that small? Let them decide what's the right space to sleep for them. And I think we can start as small as that, or variety in food, or when you're walking outdoors, instead of right, if your dog wants to go left, as long as there's nothing that's harmful on the other end, why not take the left, right? So I think it's a good idea to start letting our dogs be authority in safe spaces, in more controlled environments, and we can see how much that will, that can impact our dogs. So yeah, I think those are my thoughts on that comment. I see where the fear is coming from, but the issue is not the dog. The issue is something else, and the issue is the environment, the kind of um internal and external experiences our dogs are having, and how the humans are probably unaware and unintentionally not able to meet the needs of these dogs. So that was my thoughts about it. What do you think? Do you have anything to add to this? I'll probably see if I can bring up that post and link it on the comments after this live. But I wanted to talk about that video because there was a comment, and I like it when people bring up another perspective to what we say, because that'll help us have these discussions. So yeah, I'm happy to bring up these kind of conversations. That was one. The other is, there was another thing that I thought of, sharing with you all. It's going to be as informal as this, right? So I am not having a very formal life. This is not meant to nothing, not meant to do anything other than have a conversation. So if you have any questions, you can share. If not, I'll keep talking about whatever comes into my mind, and then we can wrap up once we are done. So this is how informal it's going to be. um, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was, I don't know if I want to talk about it here or in another conversation, but okay. So there was another video of me talking about how use of treats is not entirely through consent, right? And I know that this is a bit of a challenging conversation, because it can come across as, we professionals are having, fights among ourselves for different approaches. But I don't think I would be doing justice to the dogs if we don't talk about consent, and if we don't talk about uh, choice, freedom, and agency. I think these are things that I have realized is so critical for our dogs. It's Yeah, it's one of the basic needs I have realized for them. So I put up this post saying that, treats may not necessarily mean true consent. And there was another comment on that post, and I want to discuss about that, right? So someone was like, I want to take my dog in car, and my dog is quite fearful of cars. So how do I do that without treats? So that was a great question, valid question. um, Again, obviously there are enough number of situations where a car ride probably may not be avoidable entirely. uh, so yeah, I thought I'll bring that up, and I can discuss that as well. So first things first, I know I said car rides are not always avoidable, especially I think internationally. I don't think you have another way of transport other than, four wheelers. But in India, we do have other options. We can use an auto rickshaw, we can try and use other ways of transportation, right? Now, that's the first thing. I'm not saying it's possible for everybody, and I'm not saying that's the first thing you need to try, but it's always a good idea to think if there is an alternative. Of course, in this example, with this situation, there may not be an alternative, but it's always a good idea when we think of a situation that makes our dogs fearful. It's always a good idea to think whether we have an alternative, or is it only in our mind that this is absolutely something they have to do, they have to be comfortable with, and we have to find any which way to get them comfortable with that, right? So, first and foremost, see if you do have an alternative, right? That's first. Second is try to introduce these things. So let's take the example of car itself, right? So try to introduce it when you have no hurry to go anywhere. If you are trying planning to go to the vet today, heading out in an hour, now is not the time to get your dog used to the car, right? uh, Start so slowly, start small, start easy, um, to the point where you just go near the car and keep the car doors open. That's it. That's your probably the first point. Not even going to sit inside the car. Let your dog sniff all around the car and see what they're able to gather from the car. What information are they able to even be curious about what's inside the car? uh, I would start that small and then progress to having the doors open and see if your dog wants to get into the car. Um, and then gradually progress to maybe shut the car doors and pull down the windows. And then once they're comfortable there, then just drive around the block and come back. Not more than 2 to 3 minutes of drive. Even lesser if your dog is uncomfortable. So you start that slow. And in Sindhur's words, if you think you're going slow, then go slower, right? I think we have the need to get to our destination very quickly of whatever we want to achieve, whatever goal we have, whatever we want to do with our dogs. There's a sense of urgency to get to the goal of it. It's a good advice to slow down and take how many ever days it takes, how many ever trials it takes at whatever level you are before you go to the next one. And if you're in the next one and your dog is not comfortable, feel free to come back to the previous one. The reason for doing it this slow is because you are getting your dog's buy in on every step of the way. You're getting your dog's consent every step of the way, and your dog will continue to trust you every step. They will believe that you will respect their pace, you will respect their journey, and you will be there for them when they say I'm done. I think we need to slow down. That trust is valuable for when you need cooperation from your dogs. So I don't think we should be violating that trust by luring them, by pushing them to do things that they're not comfortable with, by offering something that they really love or want, right? I don't think there is true consent there, and that can hamper relationship. So it's a good idea to take it slow, take it gradually. Don't do it in stressful situations where you need to get into you know the car in another half an hour and you want to do this now. I don't think that's a fair space to do it, and you would be you know uh, stressing out both your dog and you, and having very unrealistic expectations at that point. The other reason why dogs may be fearful of cars, right? One is obviously closed, enclosed spaces. Not all dogs appreciate, many dogs don't appreciate enclosed spaces. So, starting off with keeping the doors open and then, closing the doors but keeping your windows down can actually give them that sense of comfort. So, I think that might help there. Uh, the other reason that they might not like sitting in the car is you're always going to the vet and they are fearful of vet, and maybe that is why they don't like the car rides. So try and then go to other destinations, or drive around the block and come back, because you're not going anywhere. And that will probably start reducing that strong association with, going to the vets just because you're in the car. It could also be because your dog is not able to jump in and out of the vehicle because of some kind of musculoskeletal discomfort. Lots of people have, bought ramps for their dogs, where the ramps can be used to climb in and out of the car. Try and see if that helps your dog. So I think various things need to be investigated as to why your dog is fearful of cars. And because it's something that's unavoidable entirely, assuming it's unavoidable entirely, it is a good idea to take it very slow and gradually at your dog's pace, right? Uh, I watch Grey's Anatomy quite a bit, and I keep rewatching it a lot. So there's an episode of it in the seventh season where one of the characters refuses to take the elevator because he had a horrible experience in that he was shot in the elevator and he was left bleeding in the elevator, and he did not ever want to use the elevator again because he was so afraid of it, and he would always take the stairs. In this episode, one of his colleagues, his boss, will tell, I'll come along with you and you will ride this elevator till you're just bored in it and not scared. Now it's an interesting scene for me because I see that while while he was asked to do this, you also should see that the character who was asked to face his fear was ready for the journey. One, it was not forced on him through either rewards or punishments. Second is that he was not alone when he was experiencing this, going through this fearful journey, or overcoming his fear. He was not alone. He was with another figure who understood why he was being fearful, who was reassuring him with his presence. And I feel like that was a great scene to talk about how overcoming fear, uh, or journey of, coping with your fear in a better manner, can be done under two conditions, which is one, the individual needs to be ready, the other being that they're not alone. So if your dog is fearful of cars, and you want them to get comfortable, you need to do it slowly, is when they'll be ready to face their fear. The other is you have to be there. You can't not be there while they go through these phases, and you have to be reassuring them of, how, their feelings, acknowledging them, reassuring them. So I think that is how I would address, getting our dogs comfortable in certain situations that are unavoidable, with their full cooperation and with their consent and at their pace. I don't know, does that make sense? We are all over the place with the topics, but I hope they are still interesting enough to hear. Any thoughts on what I was sharing? I know it's a bit of a, it's not an easy topic, and I hope to have a longer conversation about this at some point. But I hope this part of it made some sense. Um, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. So I think if you're joining just now, I mean, while I wait for people to share their thoughts if they're sharing, while if you've just joined in, we spoke about a couple of questions already, a couple of topics, and thank you, Mary. Mary says it makes perfect sense. Thank you. Okay, what other things did I want to talk about? Okay, I'll probably share the papers I'm reading. Okay, and maybe you can let me know if you want to discuss any of them in the next session. And I have printed them because I think I wanted to uh, try and read and see if I can have it handy. Um, One paper, I think this is a good paper that I can discuss because I talk about gentle parenting quite a bit, and I have some thoughts about this. So one paper is Dog Moms Use Authoritative Parenting. So I don't know, can you see? It's yeah, whatever. Dog Moms Use Authoritative Parenting Styles by Shelley Walsh and Peter Gray. And it's an interesting one. I have thoughts about this because they kind of talk about gentle parenting and how it compares to training methods in dogs. This is, this is the table that I'm talking about where they're comparing. I know you can't see this. It's okay. If I do plan to, talk about this in one of the live sessions, let me know if you want me to do all of this, like, discuss research papers. But yeah, I'm reading this paper. I think I've mostly read it, I guess. Have to check it again. And I'm reading another paper called Does Pet Parenting Style Predict the Social and Problem Solving Behavior of Pet Dogs by Lauren Brubaker and Monique Udell. Yeah, these are the two papers I'm currently reading. I'm slowly getting back to like actively reading research papers. So if you'd like me to discuss any research paper, talk about them, let me know. We can do that as well. I think the discussion on dog moms use authoritative parenting styles. I have to tell you, authoritative parenting style is actually gentle parenting. A lot of people get confused. It's authoritarian, and then there's authoritative. Authoritative is gentle parenting. And because I talk about gentle parenting quite a bit, I have quite a bit of thoughts about the paper. So I think I would love to talk about it if you want to hear and discuss papers, research papers, and how that works for us, right? At the end of it, I also acknowledge that most of us are here as dog parents and see how whatever information we can collect, how is that valid and applicable to our dogs. So we will discuss it to the extent that you want to learn and hear from me. So yeah, let me know if you want me to discuss research papers. We can take that up next week if required. So those are the two papers I'm reading, and I'm trying to get back to reading textbook material. There's a lot in that's piled up for me to read, so I'm trying to get that done. And I was actually making some downloadables for the audience. One of which was I had promised long back that I'm going to make a sleep journal template and share with all of you. Um, I'm working on it. I think I'm done with the sleep journal, but I was also thinking maybe to add a few more health and wellness trackers. Do you think you'd like that? Do you think you'd want some of it? Let me know. I'll add them. Uh, I feel like that might be a good set of journals that dog parents can use and access if they want. So that's what I have been doing the last few days. Okay. Anything else? Any questions that you have? Anything else you want me to share? If not, I had one more thing to like talk about. And this came up because um, also think about expert and authority came to me. I mean, of course, we already say that the dogs are the experts. They are our teachers. They tell us, what they need. But it also was reinforced when I was part of this conversation where a therapist was talking about how in different modes of therapy and in different approaches of therapy, there is a different position of the therapy and the client or the patient, right? In some, the therapist, the professional, is the expert, not the client. And they tell what the client needs to do because they are the expert of the client's life, right? And in some, they both are in the same position, which means that neither of them is an expert and they both explore together. And in another set of therapy approaches, the client or the patient is the expert. They know of their life, they know what their challenges are, they know all of these things. Therapist is meant to kind of help them just with perspectives and facilitate what they're looking for. And I think that sort of brought up that idea again for me, that reinforced that idea that when I go into a session for my client, or when I watch my dogs, I always am interested in what the dog is trying to tell, and what the dog is trying to access and communicate. And that kind of made me realize that the dogs know, and the more we give them space to express their needs and communicate their needs, and more we are able to listen to them, it helps. So I think that was one conversation that came up with therapists. I'll talk about the second one after talking, hearing out Mary's question. I have a rescue female who has just come into season in a house where there are two males. Males aren't fighting, only one is interested in female, but both males are interested in humping each other. The female is in separate room. Any thoughts on how to deal with this without interfering too much? So far, it's very amicable between the boys. Yeah, so I think what I would do is watch the interaction, right? How much are they able to communicate? How wired up they seem to be? How tense that interaction might be getting? I think there's a thin line between when we interfere versus when we need to interfere, right? I think if we interfere unnecessarily, then we are not letting them communicate things out. And if we interfere too late, then it might just be too late and the situation would have escalated. The only way to know how and when to intervene is by reading the body language. If you think that the humping is a little excessive, if you think that it feels um, like it's invading of the space of the other dog who's being humped, then it might be a good idea to split them and de-escalate this a little earlier. um, and because the female dog is in heat, I would do a lot of decompression, more than I would do normally, because it can like just wire them up a little bit. And even if they're not since the female is already in a separate room, they're not obviously directing this towards the female, but they could start getting a little frustrated, agitated. So it's a good idea to do a lot of decompression, de-escalation, and splitting. um, if for however long this is happening, it's a good idea that all interactions between the two male dogs are supervised as well, so that nothing untoward happens when we are not paying attention. So I think that's what I would do. um, yeah, a lot of supervision, lot of decompression, space. If at all the dogs need space, I feel like if they're escalating and they're tense, then it's a good idea to as soon as they're like even approaching each other, then you can like call them off, just de-escalate the situation. I didn't try these few things, but it's also possible that because it's such a heightened situation, uh, they may not be very good at reading communication. So if it's a good idea to start this communication before they get quite wired up as well. um yeah, that's what I would do with the street dogs here. What's happening, so it's not the same situation with any of the dogs in heat or anything, but I see that for most part they are able to communicate with each other, um, about whether they're upset, angry, they're trying to appease each other, things like that are quite good at communicating, so we don't need to intervene much in their case. But yesterday there was one situation, and normally this is the other thing, multi-dog household, we normally feed them separately. And yesterday for some reason Laddu like came out, and then he went towards lady's bowl, and we brought him away. Um, and there was like a little bit of growl and stuff like that, and that's a situation I knew that food was involved. Very valuable resource, shouldn't have happened where Laddu came so close to lady. De-escalate quickly and create distance, because that is a situation that could have gone out of hand. Same thing with when Bala comes home. Laddu and Lady sometimes do, tend to uh, try and keep him a little away from the house. He tends to sleep in the front porch or on the terrace. um, but yesterday, for some reason, he entered the house and there was not enough space in the house for the three of them to just maintain enough distance, and it escalated. So I think having a lot of distance, to be able to, move around, um, and walk away from each other if they need, have a lot of, enrichment stations. I know, Miri, I'm sure you know what enrichment stations are, right? So having few enrichment stations around, some without food if possible, because food involved in between dogs, I normally don't advise. It can again become a limited resource and escalate. So I think try these things and see how that goes. Let me know how that goes out. I'd love to, hear what happens. Um, Thank you. Wonderful advice. So far, they're not over aroused, but as you say, I need to be observant. Thank you. Yeah, it seems like they're coping well with the situation, which is great. So all you need to do is just be observant, do a lot of like decompression so that they have time to just, you know, flush off all that hyperactivity. And yeah, just allow them a lot of space, even like physical space to just move around, because I think small spaces can also lead to escalations, right? So if they're in a room and they're getting a little hyper, it's a good idea to just take them to the living room or like the dining, little, spread out spaces. So I think that also might help. I hope that answers your question, and I'd love to know what happens if you were able to try any of these things and if it worked. uh yeah, I have also been tossing treats on the floor and having them sniff them out at opposite ends of the room and outside. Yeah, that helps to create distance. Recently, I think I told another client a very similar thing as well. Great. I'm glad you're kind of managing it and they're coping with it as well. So coming back to the other thing that the therapist was talking about, um, was about how in the current world, and how things are, it's a very valid reaction for a lot of us to go through anxiety, go through, hopelessness and helplessness. Our experiences, emotional experiences, are not in isolation. They are a product of what is happening around us. And I think that also stuck with me because I felt like we don't seem to see that with our dogs, that their emotional experiences is not in isolation. What they're going through, the kind of behaviors, and this kind of ties back to the previous thing that I spoke about, how um, dog parents are kind of worried about dogs running wild if they are left themselves. And I feel like what we don't give enough thought is how the world around them can be so overwhelming. It could not just sensory overwhelm, but just it's so fast paced that humans are probably not always around. They're not able to build connections so deeply like how we once could have. We're always on our phones, we're always running for work and trying to get one thing done after the other. The kind of life that we're leading today and the kind of environment that we live in today has such a huge impact on how our dogs experience the world, which obviously comes out in terms of the behavior. And I think we need to understand that our dogs are not behaving in isolation. Their emotional experiences are not in isolation. It's not something that can be fixed in them. It's about really looking at the whole picture, and not just adding a few calming activities here and doing a few less stressful things here. Really look at how the kind of life we are leading, the kind of uh, erratic routine, yeah, the fast-paced life, the urban environment, the metropolitan kind of lifestyle, uh, the corporate lifestyle that a lot of us might have. I think these are all such um, they have such a big impact on our dogs, and of course, so much of sensory stimulation. I mean, I get affected by the amount of traffic sound that is there right outside our house. I am so thrilled at how Zoe copes with it, but I get so flustered, and it's too much. And I think I can understand if a particular dog gets a little wary of sound because there's so much of it on movement or vehicles. So yeah, I think it's important and it's worth noticing that there are a lot of things in our world, in our culture, in our society right now that makes our dogs' behaviors quite valid for them, the way they're experiencing things. I don't know your thoughts on this as I read other comments as well. Last night there was a situation at home where usually, yeah, I'm very interested in how Varun is asking this question. Let me all tell you, Varun is my husband, right? And he's asking me this. So this is what happened yesterday, right? So Lady, Laddu, Bala, all three of them were at home, and all three of them got into a very heightened situation. Um, and before I could come and see what happened, they had escalated it. um, it was interesting because Bala never enters the house. He is at the threshold. He never comes inside because he kind of doesn't push too much because Laddu doesn't allow him to. So it got a little heightened. And I realized that the space was such a small space that none of the dogs had space to like walk away. And quickly what I did was call them and then like called them towards the road outside our house, where they kind of dispersed and things went back to normal. So I think space with three dogs, I mean, at that moment we had four dogs in the living room, and two humans or three humans, I don't remember uh, whether it was after our guest was already gone or later. But I think creating space and calling off, and I think among the three of them, Laddu is the one who kind of instigates the fight. He gets a bit into it, and it's not even a fight. He's like, you're not going to come inside, you're not allowed. And Lady and Bala are kind of easy to call away, um, especially call away to the road because Laddu doesn't like them coming into the house. So I think doing that really helps. And Laddu uh, really loves our interaction, like being with us. So I tend to call him off and then like pet him, get him off that fixation. So I think that de-escalation is quite necessary. And the next time I will know not to assume that Bala will not come inside. So and I was saying this to a client in the morning, not morning, yesterday, that we should never take it for granted that our dogs wouldn't do something. uh, this is not to create fear. It is just to respect your dog enough to know that your dog is a sentient and a sapient being. They can think, they can feel, they can assess what's going on, and they can react for survival. And it's important that we respect them enough to tell that my dog will never do this uh, is an unfair thing, because I feel like we are not respecting our dogs enough. Uh, it's not to say that all dogs bite. It's not to say all dogs are aggressive. It's just to say that if you push a dog to a corner and they feel like they need to survive, and the way they can survive is by reacting, then they are capable of doing, which means that I need to remember never to put my dog in that situation, never to corner my dog or push them to a point of needing to use survival modes. um, So, yes, yesterday's situation will help me remember not to assume that Bala will not enter the house. And that way we can manage the situation better the next time. Kritika has a question. How do I go about making some streety friends for my dogs, make it safe for both parties involved? Great question. Uh, I tell all my clients, whoever has the privilege and access, to get streety friends for their dogs, right? Um, the reason being that at least one set of dogs have the freedom to walk away if the interaction is not going well. The other being that uh, street dogs, by virtue of having so many social interactions with their dogs in their own group, dogs of other groups, other humans, they are so tuned into body language communication that they can be great friends and mentors for our dogs. So I'm glad you want to, explore this. A good way to do it is be friends with the street dogs yourself first. I feel like it's a good idea to get to know these street dogs yourself, know which ones are uh, probably your dog's age and might match your dog's, the energy that they might have, someone who's their age group and can be friends with them. Know which ones are just not okay with dog interactions, and you know that you wouldn't put the other dog in the situation where they're having to interact with your dog. Know which ones are very good and friendly dogs who teach just navigating the space to your dog. For example, I think in our old house, in our old house, there was Dobby, there was Rocky, Blackie, Sandy. Yeah. So if I think about it, Blackie was absolutely not interested in dog interaction. So um, it was important that I ensured my dogs wouldn't approach him. He was a little older, also, I think. So he would not appreciate even Sandy. He and Sandy both wouldn't like um, other dogs coming towards them. So I had to be kind of mindful about it. Then there was Rocky, who was quite hyper, but he actually was the one who would walk along with my dogs and sniff along with them, go exploring the space. So he was the one with whom they do like social walking and sniffing. That was very interesting. And Dobby was also an interesting case because Dobby was this nervous dog and he would just not come out when humans would be around, but he'd come out when my dogs would go out. He wouldn't even actually interact a lot with the street dogs. He was that nervous and scared. But when Sammy and Zoe would go, he would come out from wherever he would be hiding, and he'd love to like play. And he was much younger to Sammy, much younger. He'd like to play, and sometimes Sammy would be like just getting a little hyper, and then Dobby would be like, "No, not jumping on me. I want to play with you, but don't jump on me." So that was interesting because Sammy learned and I can play with this dog if I want to. And play was, I mean, at his age, for him, play was just about like wagging tail and then sniffing each other, and that's about it. And one of the walks, actually, Dobby comes along with us as well. I have that video. But yeah, he also managed to teach Sammy that I like you, I want to like, be with you, but don't jump on me. So I think it's a good idea that you kind of vet each of these dogs to be able to see who might fall into what category, who your dogs might like, who might actually be good mentors for your dogs, who might be good friends for your dogs, who are the dogs who are not interested in any kind of interaction with with other dogs. So come up with that information, and to do that you might need to be friends with the dogs first. Next is, I would probably uh, I know you have two dogs, Kritika. So I think I'll probably start off with just one at a time, not take two of them together, and start with quite a bit of distance. See how the other dogs are approaching. You are aware of our walking, safari, loose leash walking, smiling leash, um, kind of a thing. Ensure that there are no other distractions. Try to go at a time when the environment has very minimal distractions. and you have to be a little bit relaxed as well, and see how, you know, how your dogs are communicating. And very quickly, if your dog is ready to go back, you can always, use a sound and be like, I'm ready to go back. This is what happened with Sammy one of the times, where we, for a very long time, we avoided pet dogs on walks, because Sammy would get quite wired up around them, and he would try to mount them. There would be a lot of barking and pulling on leash and stuff like that. So we would like avoid the timings when there were pet dogs, and we would just have interactions with street dogs. And one fine day, there was a pet dog, very young dog, wired up, too hyper. I think she was a puppy. She or he was a puppy, and she walked up right into Sammy, and I got a little worried initially, and then I quickly was like, I know, I think I can manage the situation, and I let Sammy figure what he wants to do. He went up to the dog. He was like, okay, but you're too hyper, not for me, and he walked away. So it is also important that you're tuned into your dog's communication, and you're able to communicate to your dog also that I'm ready to go if you want to go. So I do that. With street dogs, it's hard to do one on one, I'm guessing, because they might be in groups already. But try and then start small and slow. You don't have to do multiple street dogs at once, or you don't have to do multiple interactions quickly. And get out of that interaction quickly, as soon as you've had a good start, right? You don't even have to stay there for a very long duration, hoping for that interaction to go as long as the dogs would want. Quit while you're ahead, quit while you are doing well, and go back again, because now you have left when the dogs still have had good and pleasant experience of that interaction. So I think these are a few things that I would probably look at. If you are already aware of the dogs, then I think you can start off with picking one of the dogs and then getting them to interact. And I think, I think Luna is good with dogs also, and I think even Max might be good with dogs. I think uh, you might want to like try one of them and then see how that goes. With Luna, though, I'm taking the liberty here because I know a little bit of the background. I would take it slow because she's such a small dog, so I'll take it slow there. But with Max, it's fair to find some puppy friends for him. Any other questions? Anything else? Otherwise, I have one last question. Either we can discuss this, or I leave you with this thought and we pick it up the next time. Okay, you can let me know what you want to do. Um, I want to I want us to think about the difference between appreciation and acknowledgement, and what comes up for you when you think of appreciation, and what comes up when you think of acknowledgement. Do you think one is better than the other? Uh, what happens when you have appreciation? What kind of expectations does it set for the next situation? And when there's acknowledgement, what kind of expectations does it set for the next situation? Think of it for yourself, for your dogs, however, and we can discuss in the next session. I guess we are already 1 minute, 1 hour 8 minutes. That's quite a bit. I don't know. Was this helpful? Was this interesting? What do you think we should do next time? Let me know, and I think we can end today. Thank you for being here, all of you. Thank you for asking such amazing questions that I could respond to. I hope it gave some kind of starting point for you to go and work with your dogs. Um, Please do join in next time and let me know how that goes. I'm also there on Facebook, on Instagram, under the name of Dog Promise. You'll find me there. So let's uh, keep having these discussions. Let me know if you have any other questions, if you have any thoughts. If not, I will end the live in another 30 seconds, I guess. I'm just waiting. I'm so glad you all could join. I hope this time works for most of you. I'm hoping to come here every week. I'm telling you, with the kind of neurodivergent mind that I have, Um, I don't know. Okay, so I need to keep myself motivated to do this again and again every week. Uh, let's hope. Let's hope we'll all do this in this year. Interesting topic. Is it from both the dog's point of view and ours? I loved it and it was very helpful. Maybe think about it from both, right? So, it's very difficult to think about it from the dog's perspective because we don't really know all the time what they're thinking. But maybe think about situations when you were appreciated, and when you appreciate others, both, in both situations, are there some unsaid expectations that are set up because there is an appreciation, or there are some acceptable things that is when you get appreciated. I think these are good things to like go off on, and think about. I've been thinking about this as well because it came up in another conversation, and I feel like it's a good thing to talk about because we do talk a lot about appreciating our dogs and their behaviors, and we talk about acknowledgement as well. And are they different, are they same? um, what does it do subconsciously for us? Forget the dogs because we don't know subconsciously what it might end up doing for our dogs, but could it be subconsciously setting some standards in our minds of how our dogs shouldn't behave? I think we can talk about this the next time. Does that make sense? I don't know. I'm glad Max is eager. I want to see how is he going to react to these interactions. Do have that and then let me know. Thank you. Thank you, Varun, for being here. Thank you, Mary, for being here. Thank you for listening in. To those of you who would probably be joining and seeing this later, you can always reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram. Let me know if you have any questions, any topics you want me to discuss, any research papers you want me to discuss, and we can do that. I was so happy that you could join today, and I am glad I could do this, and I hope to do this every week. I'll see you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. IST again. Have a good evening, good night, and Happy New Year once again.